Become a sustaining member of the Commonwealth Club for just $10 a month.
The Greek historian Herodotus once said that sons buried their fathers in times of peace and fathers the sons in times of war. There's a corner of the world where fathers have been burying their sons for the past 75 years. That corner, once called the most dangerous part of the world by Bill Clinton, is a border between India and Pakistan. In 1947, British India was partitioned into Pakistan and India. Unresolved questions from the partition has led to multiple wars being fought. There have been numerous peace talks, which in some cases have actually exacerbated the conflict. And unfortunately, no long-term resolution has been found, and an uneasy peace prevails between the two countries. Complicating these issues has been the emergence of the Great Game. On the old Great Game, it was Imperial Russia's efforts to reach the warm weather ports of the Arabian Seas. The new Great Game is China's access to Middle East oil. 40% of the world's oils flows through the Straits of Malacca. It provides a bottleneck which can be controlled by a strong navy. To bypass this, the Chinese have embarked on their own great road building efforts, making its way to the countries of Asia and beyond. They're reviving the old Silk Route. Part of this route makes its way through Kashmir and into Pakistan, into a port called Gwadar, which is on the Arabian Gulf. China sees this as an opportunity to encircle India, a potential rival in Asia, and keep it on the defensive. And Kashmir, which contains both the headwaters of the great rivers of South Asia and the trade routes linking China to the Gulf, is key. Therefore, Pakistan, with China's support, is confident is dealing in any peace talks from a position of strength. And India, with its own right-wing government, will see any flexibility on its part as a sign of weakness. The United States is determined to contain China in any way it can, and meanwhile, the search for enduring peace between the two countries continues. Helping us understand the various sides of the issues and the conditions required for peace are two former ambassadors and two journalists. Abdul Basit served as the Pakistani High Commissioner to India and its ambassador to Germany. Anuradha Basin is the executive editor of the Kashmir Times and is currently a Lyle and Corien Nelson International Fellow at Stanford University. Nirupama Rao served as India's Foreign Secretary, Ambassador to the United States, Ambassador to Peru, China, and a High Commissioner to Sri Lanka. And Beena Sarwal was a Nieman Fellow at Harvard University who founded SAPAN, or the South Asia Peace Action Network, along with other peace activists from South Asia. Welcome to all of you. Let us begin. Ambassador Basit, you're the proverbial rose between three thorns. In recent interviews, you have not been very optimistic about peace, saying that you don't see a silver lining in peace talks between India and Pakistan. Could you care to elaborate?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and thank you very much for having me on the panel, and I'm looking forward to an interesting and meaningful discussion. Yes, I do not see, really do not have much hope now left, especially post 5th August 2019 decision by India to abrogate the special status of Jammu and Kashmir, because this fateful decision has been taken by India, and it has added more complications to the bilateral equation. So we are sort of, are in a cul-de-sac, and we do not see as to how our bilateral engagement can work. So, and since Pakistan, in reaction to that decision, which, by the way, was also against, not only against UN Security Council resolutions, but also against India's own constitution, as a matter of fact, and also against India's Supreme Court ruling of 4th April 2018, in which it was very clearly stated that the special status of Jammu and Kashmir could neither be amended nor can Article 370 in the Indian Constitution be removed. So India, I think that now the two countries are in a situation where, in my view, the bilateral engagement would not really deliver. What the two countries need is a third-party mediation. I know India is averse to this word, but we need to work out some arrangement whereby the two countries behind the scenes and engage and try to resolve the longest standing. In my view, as I have been telling all my Indian interlocutors, that Jammu and Kashmir is the real issue between the two countries since 1948. Yes, we do have other issues like terrorism and Siachen and Sar Creek, but the genesis of all these problems is Jammu and Kashmir. So unless and until the two sides are willing to resolve this issue in accordance with the aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, I do not see as to how the two countries can live in peace. And then you very rightly mentioned there are regional dynamics, there are new global dynamics, and both countries are trying to position themselves according to their own respective interests. So we are in a difficult situation. And as I said, we would need a third-party mediation at some stage, because we have fought wars, we have tried to have confidence-building measures in place. We also engage back-channel diplomacy, but nothing has so far delivered in real sense of the word. So this is what my take is on this particular problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Basit. Now let me turn to you, Secretary Rao. Is Kashmir the real issue? In other words, if the Kashmir problem were to be solved, do you think the problems between India and Pakistan go away, or would there be others?
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak at this distinguished forum. I think one of the speakers just before me talked about an uneasy peace between India and Pakistan. I would like to qualify that statement and say that more or less than that, we have an uneasy equilibrium between the two countries. And the reference to the great game in the title of this conversation today, I think is a little misleading. I would suggest that we speak about what happened in 1947 with the great partition of the subcontinent of India and the ensuing inability of both our countries to live together. And this has, of course, been compounded by political differences, 75 years of independence in both countries. hasn't really changed things. Animosities have only deepened and intensified. Now, the question is, you asked me about Kashmir, and having listened to Ambassador Basit, I just cannot help coming to the conclusion that when both our countries speak, and especially both former public servants like him and me participate in discussions like this, sometimes we tend to sound like broken records. And I think the task here before us is to examine how the two countries can restore engagement between themselves, because engagement is an essential tool of diplomacy. And it involves both our countries. It doesn't involve third parties. It doesn't involve multilateral organizations. It really devolves upon us. That is the responsibility. When you spoke of Herodotus and about fathers burying sons, I think you hit the nail on the head. The responsibility really is with us. Unfortunately, we've politicized the everyday, and Kashmir, the question you raised, lies at the heart of it. Now, the question here is not about what India did or did not do. Ambassador Basit spoke about the revocation of Article 370 and the so-called fallout of that. Let me say that when you talk to any Indian, regardless of the political constituency that he or she may belong to, I think everybody is united in their judgment that Jammu and Kashmir remains an integral part of India. Yes, there is a dispute between India and Pakistan on this question, and there is need really for both our countries to sit down and resolve this. Now, India has genuine problems about the whole process of engagement with Pakistan. It's not for want of trying between the two countries. And I think successive governments of India through the years have attempted to pursue engagement with Pakistan. And I think we've had some unfortunate experiences in this regard. And that has really turned public opinion in India. And I'm talking about public opinion across the spectrum. I am not talking of political parties or constituencies. There is a genuine feeling within India that our attempts to engage with Pakistan have come to naught. And at the bottom of all this, at the foundation of all this, has been the issue of terrorism. And we can talk about this later, but I believe that this issue really has to be addressed. And from the Indian point of view, it has to be addressed from Pakistan's side. And I don't believe India has shut its door on engagement with Pakistan. It's not that. I think between the people of our two countries, there must be peace. And peace continues to be our dream. But let's look at new ways of tackling these problems. Let's not just dwell on old shibboleths and old formulae. I think we owe it to future generations in both our countries.
Thank you, Secretary Rao. In that case, Anuradha, I turn to you as a resident Kashmiri. Is Kashmir used as a convenient tool by both sides to avoid talk of peace?
Yes and no. Kashmir, I would say, has been both a cause and a consequence of the India-Pakistan hostility. And it is also the main, one of the main bones of contention, and 3 wars that India and Pakistan fought were over Kashmir. But do they use it as an excuse? I think sometimes they do. Sometimes there is also these, because of how Kashmir is located, its geographical location, its strategic location has evoked or triggered security concerns, maybe misplaced to some extent, in both the countries. And that is one of the key trigger factors, which is why they tend to look at And even as the narratives of India and Pakistan on Kashmir are very, very different, and the way they take a moral ground and a moral positioning on Kashmir is very different. But the key factor is that for them, Jammu and Kashmir is more like a piece of territory. It is about controlling. It is about securitizing rest of their countries. It is about also now, for so many years that it has been going on, it is also about using it for their political convenience and their political narrative. It's never been about people. There are 14 million people living in Jammu and Kashmir on the Indian side alone. And if you add, so we are really talking about more than 20 million people. Do they really exist in that scheme of things? I think I would definitely say go with Abdul Basit on the fact that after 2019, things are much more complicated and makes it even more difficult for India and Pakistan to engage with each other because India has stripped Jammu and Kashmir of its special status. But let me throw it back to him. It was in 48 through the Karachi Agreement that a slice of Gilgit-Baltistan, a slice of Jammu and Kashmir, which is Gilgit-Baltistan, was taken and merged with the rest of Pakistan. So there is already a certain kind of precedent in which Kashmir has been dismembered again and again. And that should not make it an excuse to not engage on the issue. Because without engagement, without dialogue, there can be no movement forward. You can keep sitting back and saying, okay, this is my position and I'm not going to cross the line. I'm not even going to go near the net. And the other side also keeps saying that I don't think things are going to move. So even if you have to talk about restoration of the pre-2090 position, if you want to talk about terrorism, which is a concern for India, I think both need to sit together and talk. That's the only way things are going to move.
Thank you, Anuradha. And please, in consideration of others, let's just keep our answers brief because we have quite a few points to go over. Bina, I'll give you the choice. The question, who benefits if there's no peace between India and Pakistan?
Lots of people benefit when there's no peace between India and Pakistan. Most of all, the security establishments of our countries, the arms and ammunition dealers around the world, not just in our nobody talks about them. The manufacturers in Germany and Sweden and elsewhere, other countries, America. But who benefits when there is peace? I think is the question to be asked, and that is the people. The 1.8 billion, is it? In the subcontinent, which is a quarter of the world's population, the people, and I just want to add to something Anuradha said, the formulation, the Pakistan-India People's Forum for Peace and Democracy, in its very first convention, this is the largest people-to-people group between the two countries that has been going on since 1994 or 95. In its very first convention, the formulation on Kashmir, Anuradha, correct me if I'm wrong, was something like Kashmir should not be seen as a piece of real estate between India and Pakistan, but a matter of the rights and aspirations of the Kashmiri people, whose views must be taken into account for any dialogue between India and Pakistan. And this was in almost 30 years ago.
30 years.
Right? And so I'll just,
right,
that's answer a brief question.
It does. Thank you. Let's move on to a different subject because both Ambassador Basit and Secretary Rao have brought up terrorism. It seems that every time there's a path towards peace, an event occurs that derails the process. And much of the terrorism, unfortunately, does emanate from Pakistan, state and non-state actors. Bina, let me stay with you. Has Pakistan paid an internal price for terrorism?
I mean, you know that it has. Everybody knows. We have paid we've lost, I don't know how many thousands of people to terrorism, and that's continuing right now, security personnel, non-secure civilians. But I think the other point to consider is that if there was peace in the region, then that question of terrorism would also be, I think, resolved to an extent. because who are you fighting then?
So, Ambassador Bassett, in that case, I turn to you. There have been numerous attempts at peace talks. The most notable one that I can think of was in 1998. But very quickly in 1999, there was an attempt by the Pakistani military to sort of militarize the whole process. So my question then to you is, every time with this talk of peace, an event occurs that derails the process. What is your view on that?
First of all, let me respond to Anuradha because she mentioned Gilgit-Baltistan. Gilgit-Baltistan has never been merged with Pakistan. It continues to enjoy spatial status. As a matter of fact, a political map which was released by Pakistan in December 2019, it very clearly showed Gilgit-Baltistan as a disputed territory awaiting plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir. So Jammu and Kashmir is still not merged with Pakistan. Secondly, we talk about, you mentioned that 1998, in 1997, as a matter of like both the countries were involved in putting together a dialogue framework, which subsequently, became the composite dialogue process between the two countries. And then in between, after the two countries conducted nuclear tests, the Kargil conflict happened. People talk about the Kargil conflict, but they forget that it was India which was in breach of the similar agreement of 2nd July 1972. Had similar not happened, the Kargil would not have occurred. Because it was India which tried to change the ground realities by capturing the Siachen heights. So Kargil could be justified. As far as terrorism is concerned, Pakistan too, we too have strong concerns when it comes to terrorism. And then we do have a joint mechanism, anti-terrorism mechanism, which was established back in 2006. But it is India, which unfortunately, I can give you many examples, from, especially Uri, in which 19 Indian soldiers were killed in September 2016. Pakistan immediately offered bilateral investigations, international investigations into that incident. But it is India which never responds to Pakistan's suggestions. As a matter of fact, even when Samjhota Express blast occurred on 18 February 2007, India immediately blamed Pakistan without carrying out any investigations whatsoever. So unfortunately, India also prevaricates on the issue of terrorism, and we do not know how to address these issues. We know that how India has been involved in trying to destabilize Pakistan through Afghanistan, also in Balochistan. I was in India when Prime Minister Modi, addressing a rally on the 15th of August 2016, very openly kind of mentioned Balochistan and as to how, and then I'm privy to those details in which as a matter of fact, Mr. Ajit Doval, the incumbent National Security Advisor of India, is on record having said that Balochistan is one area where India would not let Pakistan, Pakistan can face problems in Balochistan. So I think on the issue of terrorism, Pakistan is really concerned what India is doing. And we know how the great game is being played out. We know that US is not in favor of Pakistan becoming part of BRI or Pakistan or the CPAC, goes ahead. We know how India is opposing CPAC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So all these issues are there. And as I said in the very beginning, we are not against engagement. No sane person in Pakistan would demur against engaging with India because we all understand it is in our interest. But the question remains how? Because India has been using the bilateral engagement to consolidate its occupation in Jammu and Kashmir. It is as simple as that. So we do not know how to get out of this whole situation. That's why, I have come to this conclusion now that the two countries need some help from the international community in order to reach at some modus vivendi and a permanent settlement, rather than engaging and then disengaging. We take one step forward, then we come back to square one, and nothing really moves forward. So there is huge frustration in Pakistan as well. So I hope that India gets out of its hubristic stance against Pakistan, that Pakistan has become irrelevant, we do not need to talk to it, we are now in a different league. Yeah, it is correct that India is rising economically, it has increased its clout over the years, but that does not mean that you can ride roughshod over the aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. This is what my take is on the entire issue.
Thank you, Ambassador Basit. Secretary Rao, your chance to respond to the terrorism.
Yeah.
And please,
Thank you.
Please, in the interest of time. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not here to address a press conference on this issue. So I will talk basically as a private individual, as a citizen today. And war cannot be justified by any definition. I understand that. There is no rationale, and we are here to talk about peace and how we can resolve the problems between India and Pakistan. So I'm not going to go into the history, and I'm not going to point accusing fingers. This is not an occasion for that. And I think we have to rise above that. There are genuine problems in the relationship, and we have to engage with each other. We have to address these problems. And I don't want to indulge in a slanging match. I'll just say that. I think when it comes to terrorism, India has been a victim. Pakistan must understand that. Secondly, yes, there is a huge asymmetry of power between India and Pakistan today. And I don't think Pakistan should blame India for that. I think Pakistan has to look inwards into what really went wrong with its own development, with its own politics, with its own devolution of power. These are all issues I think that Pakistan has to address. I think there has to be a genuine soul searching within Pakistan on these issues. I don't think either of our countries can leave each other or turn our backs to each other. In the ultimate analysis, we owe it to our people and to the people of Jammu and Kashmir to resolve the problems between ourselves. But please I don't think this is an occasion to point accusing fingers at each other. And I think as far as the rest of the world is concerned, I think they've seen this movie before. They've heard this refrain before. And I think we're here to talk about the future. We're here to talk about what we can do to resolve these problems.
Thank you, Secretary Rao. Moving on. Let's talk about the role of China. You've written a book about China. You've been ambassador to China. Talking about outside powers, what is the role of China in this peace process? Is this constructive? Is it hindering? Your perspective, please.
Well, I'm sorry to say that China has never been constructive. And more than that, it's been hindering. I don't think it has risen to the occasion to speak with responsibility and to speak with wisdom on these issues. Maybe at some point in our history, when I researched the book, I think China was prepared to look at the problem as something that India and Pakistan needed to sit down and resolve between each other. But today, China's position is very different, and it's tried to create a three-front problem within Jammu and Kashmir. As you know, it is in occupation of territory in Ladakh, in the Union Territory of Ladakh. And we have a problem of confrontation between our two countries on the line of actual control. So the problem has only got more complex and more convoluted, let me say, as with the passage of time. To answer your question, I don't believe China has really played any role. And in terms of if you're going to define it as a constructive role, I think it has not helped. It has actually hindered.
Thank you, Secretary Rao. Ambassador Basit, let me touch on that subject with you, because you brought up the China-Pakistan economic corridor. There was a recent report that was published that showed that actually led to the current account deficit to more than double in the trade between India and Pakistan to over $14.4 billion by the end of September of this year. Pakistan has been let down by its allies before. What is your take on China's influence in Pakistan?
Yeah, China and Pakistan, it goes without saying, we have a strategic partnership, and that relationship is moving from a strength to a strength. There is no question about that. But I can tell you that in the past, the Chinese have been kind of advising Pakistan to even, to the extent that Pakistan should be putting the Kashmir dispute on the back burner in order to engage with India. They have been advising us to have more and more trade with India, work on confidence building measures in order to have a conducive atmosphere whereby then subsequently the two countries might be able to resolve this difficult dispute. So this has been Chinese position over the years, and I still believe that China would very much like Pakistan and India to sit across the table and resolve our bilateral problems. But the question is, as you know, it is said, it takes two to tango. Yes, this occasion is not to engage in a slanging match. I fully agree with Ambassador Rao. But the question is, we need to underline the fundamental issues which continue to hinder or stymie Pakistan-India relations to be normal relations. That is what we are trying to do. But unfortunately, all doors seems to have been closed. And that's why, I suggested that now that we are in a very difficult situation, perhaps we would need a third party help, international community's help. Both the countries have failed over the last 75 years to resolve their bilateral disputes. As a matter of fact, we added more disputes to our relations, and rather than resolving them. So if this continues, I'm afraid we will go nowhere, and we'll continue discussing these matters. So the question is whether there is any desire in New Delhi to solve the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. I can assure Ambassador Rao that all other issues are peripheral, in my view. If you today resolve the Kashmir issue upfront, the issue of terrorism, everything gets resolved itself, because the main, the bone of contention would be removed. And this is what my take is. Let's hope that the big powers, including China, yes, I do understand that China is also one of the stakeholders in the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. Pakistan, there is a 2nd March 1963 Pakistan-China border agreement in which we kind of conceded some territory to China. And there is an issue of line of actual control between China and India. And that issue also needs to be resolved in order for South Asia to realize its economic potential. South Asia is, one of the regions in the world which does not have more than 5% of intra-regional trade, unfortunately. Look at the European Union, ASEAN, other regional organizations. And the fundamental reason for this is the hostility which exists between Pakistan and India, unfortunately.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Basit. So, Anuradha, I now turn to you. Both Secretary Rao and Ambassador Basit has talked about creating an atmosphere. In India, the Modi government has built a very successful platform of Pakistan bashing and implicit Muslim baiting. Given that atmosphere, how difficult will it be to build an effective atmosphere for peace or a people-to-people bridge, in your opinion?
A lot depends on the leaderships of the two countries, how they are going to sell a kind of peace agreement. The leadership needs to have a certain faith, a certain belief in peace, and they need to take that initiative. Unfortunately, today we do not see that happening in India, because we have a government, we have a person leading the country who is ideologically not positioned that way. And where the lines between the Muslim and Pakistan and terrorism are getting more and more blurred, and it is becoming more and more difficult, not just for peace, but even within the country to create some kind of a constituency for peace. In fact, the polity within India today is becoming more and more divisive, and that's something to worry about. I feel, Mr. Basit has talked about a third-party mediation. Whether it's third party or it's the two countries making an effort on their own, unless there is an initiative and statesman-like approach within these two countries, by the leaders of the two countries, I don't think we are going to make any headway even with a third-party intervention, which the third party may have their own interests at the end of the day.
Thank you. So Bina, I now turn to you with a different perspective. Madhya Afzal of the Brookings Institute was recently quoted as saying that there were two pillars of Pakistan. One was a reliance on Islam, and the other was an anti-India. Given that perspective, is it possible for any Pakistani leader to emerge from that cauldron to pursue peace with India?
Well, actually, that's, I think, slightly misleading, because there is a consensus in Pakistan for peace in India. It already exists. Every single political party that has come to power has had peace with India as part of its manifesto. So that constituency is very much there. Unfortunately, the events of 5th August 2019 that Anuradha and Ambassador Basit talked about, the then government at that time took the decision to not engage with India and cut off all ties and trade with India because of its action on Kashmir. And I think that probably any sensible person would agree that when you cut off all ties, when you shut the door on dialogue, then how do you move forward? So unfortunately, that is still a policy part of Pakistan's policy to not engage with India unless they resolve Kashmir. So that is like, how do you move forward then? Because India is not about to move forward to resolve Kashmir. So then that means that it's the people of Kashmir that are thrown under the bus in this whole situation. So I think that, and I think as Ambassador Rao said, it's time to move beyond the blame game and who did what, and that what we call tutu meme in our country, like just like pointing fingers and all that, and think about the people, have people-centered policies, which is not the case right now. Both sides are engaged in a kind of a high on their own high horse and engaged in trying to blame the other side. And I think that we really need to build a consensus. The other really important piece of the situation here is that of the media, And as journalists, we both know, and as we are part of media as well, but we also can see how the media has been part of the problem, how media on both sides are not building any kind of there's no talk about peace, or they're furthering the narrative of bigotry and hatred and conflict, and the social media aspect has completely added more, muddied the waters even further, so that the negative spreads very fast. And in the meantime, we don't know how many people here or who are watching online or whatever would know that there are people in India who are not Muslim, who have been really working tooth and nail. They've been fighting for the rights of Kashmiris. There are so many groups that have been working for that. Granted, they're small, but in that atmosphere, they've been working for that. But we don't hear about them, and Pakistan chooses not to highlight those groups either, because it goes against the Pakistani narrative of the Muslim part of it, because many of these people are not Muslim, like Arundhati Roy, for example, or the Kapil Kak, or like people like that. So,
thank you, Bina. So, Secretary Rao, I now turn to you and the role of economy. The new Indian budget was recently released. There was obviously increased investment in defense and infrastructure, but turns out social programs were the most affected and depleted. Given that India ranks near the bottom for all sorts of social indices, like child hunger, even in South Asia, how long do you think that India can afford to maintain an aggressive posture on these borders?
Yes, thank you. Well, I sit here in India. I live in the city of Bangalore, and I am witness to this huge energy and dynamism that you see across the face of India today. In many ways, I think this is our second freedom in so many ways, because numbers of people lifted out of poverty, the rate of growth of the economy, the fact that there is this, people are consumed with this desire of progress. So let's put that in context. And I speak here as somebody who is on the ground, who witnesses this happening every day in our cities, across the face of this enormous country. And I think, yes, there are people in poverty that still need to be lifted out of it. We have to address issues of human development. I don't deny that. No country is perfect, but let me say we're a robust democracy. We are a very robust, vibrant democracy. And I think that is something that Pakistan can learn from also. Pakistan has been divided as far as its power centers are concerned. And we know that the role of the army, the role of the inter-services intelligence has all been a very potent and somewhat, I would say, let me use the word malevolent force as far as, the destiny of that country is concerned. I just don't speak of India-Pakistan relations in this context. And when Ambassador Basit speaks about the need to resolve the issue of Kashmir, I don't think India is shying away from the question of resolving the issue or talking to Pakistan on this. But let us be practical, let us be pragmatic, let us be realists. I think we're all agreed that in international relations and foreign policy, we have also to look at what we can do as first steps. We haven't spoken ever, and I've dealt with Pakistan on so many occasions in the course of my career. And I've always felt, Ambassador Basit spoke of South Asia. Yes, South Asia is meant to be an integer. We are meant to be more regionally integrated. We're the least integrated regionally of any part of the world. We have a problem there, we really do have a problem. But how do we address it? I've seen how SAARC meetings have been conducted. We've always had issues of, I don't know whether it's a lack of confidence on the part of Pakistan or just this innate suspicion about cooperating with India, even on issues like education, on issues of health. Could have done so much more, for instance, in fighting COVID and in doing, helping each other. But we really weren't able to do it. But I think because of these innate suspicions that exist, yes, in Pakistan and also to some extent in India. I don't believe this is the time to accuse our leaderships of what they have done or not done. I think in all fairness, Prime Minister Modi started out with a genuine desire to reach out to Pakistan. And I think, I don't want to go into the examples of what we did, but I think there was a genuine attempt to establish leadership level contact, to deepen mutual confidence. But I think the sequence of events after that destroyed India's confidence in the process. And once again, let me come back to the central issue that the people of the country, the majority of Indians feel that the pursuit of peace and engagement and normalization with Pakistan has not yielded success because of what we've experienced from Pakistan in terms of the reaction. And it has a lot to do, I think, because of the machinery and the process and the structure of power within Pakistan. So I think even as we talk of the economy and we talk of, how we need to progress, let me say India is taking care of itself very well. And I think the people of the country seem united in their feeling that great things are happening within the country. And I speak as a dispassionate observer. I have no political agenda. I am a retired citizen, but I see this enormous energy and dynamism around me, and I feel very, very heartened by it, let me say.
Thank you, Secretary House. Bina, now turning to you, and sticking to the role of economy. The news from Pakistan is even worse. Pakistan is in serious risk of defaulting on its debt, and not for the first time. What price for this aggression?
Say that again.
What price for the aggression? What price for this continuing build-up of the military?
Well, I mean, that is very obvious. I mean, we spend a very large percentage of our GDP. I'm not sure exactly what the last one was, but on much more on military expenditure than on education or health. And I think that has to change. I think that is, I like this talk about South Asia that both the ambassadors have talked about, because while Pakistan's figures for military expenditure and health and education are not good, they are reflected pretty much across in the region, and all the countries of the region don't spend enough on health and education and spend much more on security measures, on the security establishments. I think that one of the biggest prices that, in terms of as a regional entity, like Ambassador Rao said, it's meant to be regionally integrated. And Ambassador Basit pointed out that only 5% of interregional trade takes place. I think it's like something like $23 billion is the current interregional trade between South Asian countries, which is really abysmal. And the potential is like at least 67 billion. This is according to World Bank figures from 2016. So, and one of the things that is not happening in terms of being regionally integrated is that people aren't allowed to travel and trade. We conduct our trade via the Middle East or other countries, which is ridiculous. And the energy situation that you talked about earlier, or several people here mentioned that. At one time, I remember India was willing to help Pakistan. There was a businessman in India, I forget the name, but they were going to help Pakistan resolve its energy with electricity production, and that didn't happen. Something, again, like you said, like whenever something good starts to happen, some kind of incident happens, whether it is internal or whatever, and people are not given visas. I know one gentleman whose mother was, he's from Hindu, Rajput from Tharparkar in Pakistan, whose mother was in Jodhpur across the border in India, just barely 3 hours away by drive. And he couldn't get a visa. 5 times he applied at the time that I wrote about his story. And then he finally got his visa after the 8th time, but by then his mother had died. And these kind of things, the price that people pay for this intransigence of not allowing people to visit, the visa situation, even people here who are Indians and Pakistanis, or Americans of Indian and Pakistani descent, find it hard to get visas to each other's countries, to the countries back home. And this is the price. I mean, this is something, what can we do? Well, first of all, open the visas. Why are you making the people pay this price? We have this enmity between China and America, or like this tensions, right? Nobody has stopped that. The trade between China and America continues. Chinese people continue to live here. I know people who've adopted Chinese babies, here in America. But between India and Pakistan, you can't even go across the border if your mother is dying.
So switching the subject, and not all is gloom and doom. We are speaking of people-to-people ties. There are many
which are not allowed.
Yeah.
We meet in third countries. We can only meet in third countries.
But there are many areas of commonality between the two nations.
Yes.
There are very strong cultural ties. Pakistani dramas are very popular in India, and Hindi films are obviously very popular in Pakistan. There are concerts that take place. There are places to pilgrimage, exchange of knowledge. Anuradha, to you, how does it apply to peace and to the people of Kashmir?
I think immensely. Cultural exchanges are one thing, and they're very, very important because there's a whole lot of bonding. And I think in India, I'm from the north, so for North Indians to identify with Pakistanis is much, much easier than identifying with somebody from South India because it's a very different language. It's the same kind of culture and same kind of food, same kind of love for music and all cultural activities and their shared spaces. But apart from that, I think people have other kinds of vested interests, and there needs to be a public opinion building on that, that they have a vested interest in peace, and their involvement is going to further help any kind of peace process that starts between the two governments to sustain, because they have a vested interest in trade, they have a vested interest in so that the military spending is much less and there is more spending on say education, development, hospitals, health, which all of South Asia today craves for. I think, and the problem, however, today is it's not just disconnected. If I may just add, take half a minute. It's not just that visas are not being allowed, but because of the visas, the flights between India and Pakistan are not operating. The last time that I flew via Dubai. It doesn't make any sense. And even phone calls. In J&K, in Kashmir on our side, we cannot call. There's no direct dialing facility to Pakistan. And if people get calls from Pakistan, you may face interrogation. This is the situation.
Thank you. So, Secretary Rao, very quickly, please. Is people-to-people contact a catalyst for peace?
Definitely, I think people-to-people contact is a catalyst for peace. And I think if you look at the whole history of India-Pakistan relations, I think it's quite clearly established that people-to-people linkages, conversations, better communication, better infrastructure to link both countries, nobody disputes the need for that. But I think if you place an obstacle in the bilateral interaction by saying you need to solve Jammu and Kashmir first before you can do anything else in the relationship, it's just not going to work. It's not practical. It's not realistic. You have to build a superstructure of a normalized relationship before you tackle the really difficult problems. And that's not just happening. And I think, having heard Ambassador Basit, I believe that within the establishment in Pakistan, there just doesn't seem to be any transformation of attitude on these issues. So let me say, I think we need to open a new chapter. Let's start with small steps and through that process, build more common ground.
Thank you, Secretary Rao. So we are coming near the end where we're getting questions from our audience, but in 30 seconds or less, I will let each one of you answer because we are in the United States. Ambassador Basit, let me start with you. What can the United States do?
Let me first, Pakistan is not against people-to-people contacts. Even after 5th August 2019, Pakistan allowed, the Kartarpur corridor to inaugurated that and for Sikh pilgrims. We find, an inherent contradiction in India's position. On the one hand, India tells us that the Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India. And on the other hand, it says that it is ready to discuss Jammu and Kashmir. So hence, there are problems and there are many things which do not make sense when it comes to Pakistan-India relations.
But what can the United States do, Ambassador?
United States can rather, play a constructive role rather than making India part of the Quad, which is introducing new dangerous dynamics into our region. India has a cold start doctrine, which is again, makes South Asia a very dangerous place. As India violated Pakistan's airspace post Balakot, post Pulwama attack, and violated our airspace, and Pakistan reacted on the 27th of February 2019. So, India needs to revisit, reflect, introspect. And Pakistan and the US can encourage India, nudge it towards resolving the bilateral disputes, particularly, especially the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. I'm sorry, I'm coming again and again to Jammu and Kashmir.
Sorry, Ambassador Basit, you're running out of time. You're running out of time, and I don't think you're answering the question. So let me turn to you, Bina. What can the United States do to promote peace in the region?
I think the United States might want to first look inwards and promote peace within the United States. And social justice, peace and all that, because when the United States tries to tell people about democracy and to improve their situations, well, then you look at what's happening here. I mean, yes, they can be more encouraging and they can encourage, I think they can encourage dialogue. But I think I would just like to say that there's a lot of dialogue that needs to happen between our countries, between the regions within our countries, and also through the United States, I suppose they can encourage more dialogue. But I would just say that if at the same time they would introspect and also look at social justice issues here, they might be taken more seriously.
Anuradha, role of the United States.
I agree with
Briefly,
Beena. And to add to that, I think there's a role that the diaspora can play instead of sharpening the cleavages between the two countries and communities back in South Asia. I think they can play a more constructive role, a more...
Secretary Rao, can the United States play a constructive role?
Well, let me first say that India and the United States are trusted global strategic partners today. That is one point. And as two democracies, I think there is a unanimity between both of us that we need to build bigger and better relations between the two countries. As far as the India-Pakistan factor is concerned in this relationship, as someone was saying the other day, the Indo-Pak has been replaced by the Indo-Pas, which is the Indo-Pacific. And really speaking, it's not a question of uniting against China, but uniting in order to strengthen democratic forces that speak of a rule-based international order. And therefore, when I speak of the rule-based international order, I believe the United States would like to see peace between India and Pakistan. It does not seek to interfere in this process. And I think the United States itself has come to realize over the last few intervening decades what the threat of terrorism emanating from the Afghanistan-Pakistan region has been. In the United States itself has been a victim to this. And I think that has introduced a new element as far as the United States' approach to this region is concerned. I'd leave it at that.
Thank you, Secretary Rao. So we have a question from the audience that talks about climate change, perhaps the way of uniting the two countries. Beena, Pakistan's Sherry Rahman made a big splash at the last climate talks. She argued the large floods in the subcontinent were due to climate change. Could that be a primer for driving the two governments together?
I think not just the two governments, but the whole region. At the South Asia Peace Action Network, we've had a couple of sessions on this, on the need for talks about climate change and environment. And again, Kashmir comes into the picture because that is the source of all the waters, at least in Pakistan, and also major rivers in India. And these are things that affect everybody, that affect the world in the end, So definitely this is something that people can, that they can come together and talk about.
So we have a few minutes left. Ambassador Basit, one quick question. Every time we see a photograph of you in India, you're always laughing and joking and chatting up the beautiful women and actresses in India. Has there been any missed opportunities? Has there been any missed opportunities in the past for peace?
I think there have been many missed opportunities.
Briefly, please. Thank you.
Many missed opportunities. But let me, add here. India, US can help us. Let's begin, if not Jammu and Kashmir, why not to make Siachen a peace park, as was suggested by Pakistan back, 20 years ago. So let's begin with that. If India has any problem with talking on Kashmir, let's begin by making Siachen a peace park. And that will, in my view, go a long way in creating a better, conducive environment between the two countries.
Thank you, Mr. How about you, Secretary Rao? You've been at the forefront of the foreign policy establishment of India for a long time. Missed opportunities for peace in the past?
I think there have been a lot of missed opportunities for better relations between India and Pakistan. As I said, our responsibility here is not to go into the blame game. I think we need a future-oriented approach. And I think we need genuine efforts to be made to restore engagement between the two countries. But, let us not impose conditions on the resumption of dialogue is my advice. Let's start with small steps. And I think trade and better communication are of utmost importance, and a dialogue between different sections of the population, particularly the youth. And I think that is really the forward orientation that we need today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Secretary Rao. So we are at the stage of a talk. We have time for just one last question. And Anuradha, do you see a 100-year peace treaty path that will allow each region on both sides to heal the wounds from partition?
Yeah, definitely. Peace is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But I agree, you can begin with a smaller framework and build up on that, because the smaller framework is going to create conditions that are conducive for peace. But there has to be a certain commitment on both sides unconditionally that, yes, we will discuss all issues and all contentious issues. I think that's the way to move forward.
Bina, do you see a 100-year peace treaty path between the
Absolutely. First, let people meet. Let people open the visas. Let there be soft borders. Let's think about, as one of my mentors said, Dr. Mubashir Hassan, why can't we have a South Asian Union or a South Asian Federation like the European Union or like America, Canada, or if France and Germany can, after centuries of enmity, have open borders, soft borders, allow trade and travel, and be part of a federation, why can't we in South Asia? Instead of which the borders are getting harder and harder. But I really think, I agree completely about the need for small steps. Siachen Peace Park, great idea. Let's start with the low-hanging fruits. Let's let people meet. That is, I think, I would really, really appeal if America can do one thing, that is, if they can prevail upon the foreign ministries of both sides to allow people to meet, please. That is really, really so key. And there is so much pain of the divided families, of the women who are married across borders. In your family, there's people who are married across the border, and how painful it is. And when somebody is ill or dying, or there's a wedding or something, and you can't, you have to apply months ahead for a visa, and even then you might not get it. It's incredibly painful. And the youth, I think I completely agree. We need those youth exchanges which we used to have at one time. And the youth, and the youth of the region, they are already talking via social media. Why can't we let them meet physically?
Thank you, Bina. So we've reached the end of the discussion. Our thanks to our participants. We also thank our audience here for your thoughtful questions. Now this meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California and its 121st year of enlightenment discussion is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.